Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I want your thoughts on the rather mysterious case of this unidentified company owned by an unnamed foreign government that a court just ordered to comply with a grand jury subpoena. You're a former prosecutor. What can you gather from the limited information the U.S. government, the prosecution, the Mueller probe has put forward?
Well, I think the obvious one can glean from all of this is that the early reporting that the Mueller probe is nearly finished are a long way from being accurate. I think there's a lot left to go, and clearly the sentencing memorandum for Flynn and now this activity shows a very active continuing investigation. To me, the biggest shoe that has yet to drop is what Mueller is doing and what they are going to do about the change, the pro-Russia change in the Republican Party platform relative to our national position on the Ukraine. And when you consider this Trump business deal that was going on in and around that time period, when you consider that Manafort and Flynn were both engaged in those conversations, that Manafort was leading his team through that convention, that Manafort had his own interests, pro-Russian interests in Ukraine, and is perhaps one of the most transactional people ever born on the planet. The idea that that all happened without there being quid pro quos and nefarious behavior seems very unlikely. And so that's the big next piece that I'm expecting to drop. Based on what we already know, I wouldn't put it past Mueller to indict the Trump campaign. We're circling that wagon pretty closely, too.
I suspect you're right. This looks like it's going to go on and on. You see no end, at least right now, right?
Not immediately, and I honestly don't see how Bob Mueller or any prosecutor could walk away from that Ukraine plank switch at this stage. I think there's very likely something chargeable in all of that mess. So I think until that shoe falls, we know that the investigation will continue.
And on your suggestion that that's possible, that Mueller might actually indict the Trump campaign, what do you know about that?
Well, I don't. I'm just drawing conclusions. Mueller has done, unlike Kavanaugh and Starr back in the Clinton investigation, Mueller has done a very professional job of not litigating his investigation in the media and in the public. So we really don't know much about this. But when you see the indictments of Manafort and look at his at least temporary period of cooperation, when you see Flynn's charge and sentencing coming up and his cooperation, when you look at some of the threads that connect into the Trump campaign, it's easy to imagine a indictment of the Trump campaign as a corporate entity, and then that would create further activity in the investigation.
But it doesn't exist anymore, that campaign. How do you indict an entity that really, at least for now, doesn't exist?
Well, it existed at the time, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were some lingering corporate presence that could be indicted, and you work through that to get to other people. I think that it's a credible thing for them to be looking at.
It is Thursday, the 20th of December of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Man cannot live by, mayo alone or at all. Depends on what part of Europe you're coming from now, doesn't it? Hey, Trump has decided that we're just going to give up Syria to the Russians and their friends because Vlad told him to. Vlad obviously sees that Trump's not long for the office, and he's got to get what was promised, and he's got to get it now. So Trump unilaterally just decided, we're pulling out of Syria, and it's because he went to a commander-in-chief themed finishing school, along with the military themed school, because he doesn't really know the logistics of bugging out. What an idiot. But we already knew that, and the military basically has to ignore him, which doesn't set a really good precedent for future dealings in our great experiment, doesn't it? Oh my God. Well, it was all part of a plan by a hostile foreign power, and they've done pretty well. And I would also say hostile domestic powers as well, because we are supposed to be protected from enemies from without and within. And there's a lot of corporate fascist money. Now, let's be clear. When you got the Mercers and the Kochs and the Petersons and the Adelsons, there's something about that dynamic that always leans a little bit towards fascism. And I wonder why. Because apparently there's this belief that by dint of the fact that these people have tremendous amounts of money, that they are next to God. And they believe that themselves, that they are ordained with some sort of benevolent knowledge that the rest of us lack. Otherwise, how could someone as idiotic as a Trump make the decisions that he does? It can't be all from Adderall. Come on. There's something else going on there, isn't there? Well, there's all sorts of other goings on about the world, but we have a curated show for you today because, well, we do. We're a virtual salon. It can be a far-ranging discussion, but we have a few topics we'd like to at least start your day off with. Well, at the top there, that was a discussion about, with all the evidence that we have, the logical next step, or the next logical step, there you go, would be for Mueller to link up that RNC Ukraine platform change as a quid pro quo. And then we'll see if you can indict a sitting president who has no standing to be president in the first place. Let's be clear. On the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Oklahoma cops take $149,000 from a black Atlanta DJ. Then they throw him in jail for not using his turn signal a full 100 feet before making a lane change. Civil asset forfeiture. I think we should do civil asset forfeiture at the White House. Didn't he get that for... I mean, that's a possession by ill-begotten gain. Hold it, and we'll figure it out later. He can petition to get it back if it's really his. Congress is on the verge, after a century and nearly 250 attempts, of finally making lynching a federal crime. And a federal judge is forcing Trump to bring back the domestic violence victims that he deported. There's no end to this despot's cruelty, is there? After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where the Michigan House plans to kill the Republicans' lame duck power grab Well, at least somebody's decided to legislate. And the multi-talented Penny Marshall carved a unique path for women in Hollywood. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link at the rightish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And do check out her shows on Saturdays. The first one being At the Table with Kelly Lincoln, and that begins at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Oh, that would be 6 p.m. on the East Coast. Of course it would. And then a few hours later, she teams up with Ricky May for the Round Table Roundhouse Power Hour, beginning at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and a Power Hour it is indeed. If you would now look to the leftish from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the Contribute button. And that is there so that if you could become, please, a Patreon, a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring donation or contribution allows Netroots Radio to keep resisting, as really the founders originally intended for Resistance Radio to resist. So thank you for that. And we're in a fund drive. A much more serious one than we usually do daily at all the rest of the year. So thank you for your generosity. We are truly unable to do this without you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I also am on Daily Co's. And of course, now you will notice... And I'm there as Justice Putnam, by the way, and that's where the show notes and links diary is. You will notice that there's a couple of disclaimers right now. One being is that the content is not reviewed by Daily Coast editorial staff, and then at the bottom there's a dialogue box that says this is content made by a Daily Co's member, and you can too, essentially, is what it says. I'm paraphrasing. And that is because, for some reason, Daily Co's got put on a ban list on the search engines for being fake news. Fox got to keep on. InfoWars is okay. Oh, yeah, InfoWars, not fake news. Oh, no. But Daily Co's somehow was, and you know why. Because, I don't know, we tend to elect more and better Democrats now, don't we? Gotta stop that. Well, as much as Marcos and the rest, and really all of us, hate that happening, there it is. And I really don't mind. So, thank you out there, the vast right-wing conspiracy. I mean, I guess it's been codified now, hasn't it? It has indeed. All right. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and also pick up podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Hey, I would have mentioned that we're on Facebook, but I don't know. I'm about ready. I do have a lot of family there, and I was thinking, God, if I deleted my Facebook account, maybe I should just do the show. No, because I always put like everything on there that I do about the show and the radio there anyway, just because. But then I thought, well, since I have so much family on there, I would be really deprived of continuous family gossip. Backyard remodel pictures, photographs, they come through on my DMs sometimes too. I wonder who's reading those. Just a slew of other things. I mean, graduation Macy's wish lists. There's that, and of course the ubiquitous Dr. Oz remedies. You got those, and I really love the little angel prayer gifts that come in. I would be deprived of all of that, and I thought, deleting my Facebook account sounds like a pretty damn good idea in light of all of that, so I think I probably will. All right, let's get on with this first article here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And since it's in by way of Raw Story, I wait until the last minute to open it up because Raw Story, to be able to get to Raw Story now. And I like them. They're a good aggregate. And sometimes I go to Alternate because I don't have as many problems with all the pop-ups. And Alternate doesn't say, turn off your ad blocker. But Raw Story does. So I have to allow it to do its thing. And if I allow it to just keep pumping in all the videos and everything, it might freeze. It might gum up. And eventually I get this splash page also where it covers. I guess the solution to that would be to pay a subscription now, wouldn't it? But I turned off my ad blocker. I'm paying. All right. And, who is doing this in Raw Story, by the way? Of course, it's Travis Geddes. Good on him. An Oklahoma deputy seized nearly $150,000 from a professional hip-hop musicians over a lane change violation. Harvey Mueller, a musician known as DJ Speedy. Uh-oh. Well, that's your first mistake. Don't let him know that. Who has worked with Beyonce and Jay-Z. Well, you would expect. They come as a package, I thought. Maybe not. Don't tell Beyonce that. She might get pissed. He was driving from Atlanta to Los Angeles when an Oklahoma County Sheriff's deputy stopped him on Interstate 40 for failing to signal a turn a full 100 feet before changing lanes. Oh, Interstate 40 in Oklahoma? Oh, you mean you better not be black while driving? Or you better not look like you're brown while driving? Or you better not look like you're Asian while driving, and they don't say Asian. It's something a little bit more derogatory. Really, I'm serious. They do. Oh, yeah, that Interstate 40. Boy, they do have a revenue stream that they have to keep coming in because they can't expect to get all the money directly from a state, a liberal state. Sometimes they like to extract it from, the citizens of that state traveling through directly from them. And then they'll get some more on the top. Well, DJ Speedy said, I was racially profiled, plain as day, no way around it. He went in with the questions of, where are you going? What's in your car? The deputy was suspicious of the story, according to an arrest affidavit. Yeah, because the guy's black. Then he asked me, can he search my vehicle? The 42-year-old Mueller told the local TV station there. No, you can't search my vehicle. What warrants you to search my vehicle? Oops. Uppity black man. And he's going to start getting hulked up, too, and it's even more dangerous now. Yeah, so then, of course, the deputy called for a canine unit, and the dog alerted the authorities to possible illegal drugs in the car. But investigators found none. However, deputies found more than $149,000 in cash, which they seized after claiming Miller's vehicle smelled like cannabis. Well, I say, put it in a little vial, and if it smells like cannabis in the lab, then it is. Otherwise, you have no scientific evidence of such. Yeah. Miller said, I've never used drugs. I'm not drinking. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't doing nothing. You have nothing on me except I have money. I'm black and I have money. And the cops are going, damn right. That money is suspicious. How did a black man like you get $150,000? If we're going to throw a guy in jail for having a little bit over $1,000 that he wanted to cash in. It was a paycheck. If we think that's suspicious, do you think that your $149,000 is going to go past our scrutiny? You know, like go under our radar? No, we have radar for that. That's called racial profiling. Don't tell anybody. And if you do, we'll just say you were resisting arrest now, aren't you? Well, Mueller was arrested on suspicion of possession of drug proceeds and possession of a forged counterfeit note after a fake $20 bill was found, and he was released after 12 hours in jail. The Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office denied the racial profiling allegations, saying the vast majority of drivers they pull over are white. Yeah, the vast majority of them are white, but they seem to pull over the black people at a higher rate than they pull over the white people, statistically. So, thank you. Thank you, Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office. We know how statistics work, and as the great Charles Schultz said, tell your stats to shut up. Well, he went on. The numbers we see are in line with the makeup of the population of Oklahoma County. Sure. But you're pulling over people from other states now, aren't you? Uh-huh. Mueller, who has a home in both Atlanta and Los Angeles, has not been formally charged in the case, but he wants his money back, and he wants his record cleared and restored. I want to be exonerated from all of this, Mueller insisted. Serious. If they can take $150,000 from a black DJ from Atlanta and Los Angeles, he has houses in both, take that money from him in civil asset forfeiture for a crime that he never committed. Why can't we use civil asset forfeiture against the mobster in the White House right now? He gained that property by ill-gotten gain. It is the product of a crime. I guess it has to be proved in court, but I don't know. Civil asset forfeiture is before the fact, so they don't scoot out or something. Well, it's not stopping the White House. He's got what he calls the Southern White House, too. Better confiscate that. Gee, I'm serious. Can you imagine all the Russian and Chinese eavesdropping devices at that place? I can. This next article is by Frank Dale out of Think Progress. Now, we don't know why lynching has not been a federal crime. They've only been trying since, well, really, I got to say, even before Reconstruction. But really, when Reconstruction happened, and then, oh boy, Reconstruction, when black people got the right to vote, you think it's crazy now. That's when the whole lynching thing really took off as like a popular cultural phenomena. Like the traveling carnival. It was crazy. Literally. Well, it's nearly 2019, and lynching is still not a federal crime in the United States. Congress has tried and failed to change that almost 250 times over the past century alone. But the long-pursued effort to make lynching a federal hate crime has now cleared the Senate for the first time in history after the latest attempt was unanimously approved yesterday. Senators Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Tim Scott, Democrat, and Tim Scott, Republican, introduced the bill, which was co-sponsored by 35 other senators in July, and it gained unanimous approval from the Judiciary Committee in October. Now, of course, we know the three principal authors of this bill are black. Oh, except for Kamala Harris. She's not only black, she's a cop. Don't forget that. As if that's supposed to be bad on our side. Give me a break. I want to thank our colleagues for this incredibly important act of bipartisanship in the United States Congress, Harris said shortly after the bill passed the Senate. Booker thanked colleagues for making the historic moment possible. There were 4,745 lynchings in the U.S. between 1882 and 1968, according to the Tuskegee Institute, most of them targeting African Americans of the Deep South, and some of those others were, well, African American sympathizers, shall we say. Or outside agitators. There were those too, like students. They're always coming from the outside and trying to take over. But the violent murders have not been entirely confined to the previous century. Melissa McKinney's a prominent black activist in Ferguson, Missouri, believes her 24-year-old son, found hanging from a tree in her backyard in October, was lynched, though police are reportedly investigating Dane Jones' death as a suicide. Think Progress's Ian Millhiser has detailed how former Senator Richard Russell, a Georgia Democrat and segregationist whose name adorns one of the 3 Senate office buildings, despite his proclamation that he was willing to go as far and make as great a sacrifice to preserve and ensure white supremacy, twice filibustered federal bans on lynching, the second time joining a 6-week-long talkathon to keep the bill from receiving a vote. The Senate passed a resolution formally apologizing to lynching victims in 2005, but said federal legislation against lynching remained wholly necessary and appropriate at the time. The bill that senators approved yesterday would also need to pass the House before it could be signed into law by sitting President Donald Trump. In an unfortunate yet poetic coincidence, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, Repug of Mississippi, who cracked a joke about lynchings at a campaign event before narrowly reelected last month, was presiding over the Senate during the vote to make lynching a federal crime. Needham of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Yes, we have much more coming at the chef's table. Back in June, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions issued one of the cruelest pronouncements of his cruel tenure in the Trump administration, that victims of domestic violence or gang violence would generally not be eligible for asylum, meaning you're not coming in. And if you're here, goodbye. Thankfully, the ACLU just won a major court victory, forcing the administration to stop enforcing these policies. And the plaintiffs in the case, a dozen adults and children who had been denied asylum and given deportation orders, were ordered to be allowed to try again to seek asylum and to be returned to the U.S. if they'd already been deported. Now, the reason people come here as refugees, asylum seekers, is because they are escaping tremendous, terrible violence. Sending them back will get them killed, and that is what has been happening. For those who are still left alive, you can retry. And what does that mean? You can't apply for asylum at an embassy in Honduras, for instance, since we don't have one. But I'm just saying, the reason that this trek is made, this perilous, dangerous trek is made, is because they have to come to a port of entry here. The plaintiffs suffered horrific violence in their home countries. One woman named Grace was raped and beaten by her partner of 20 years, in large part because she had indigenous heritage. Another woman named Mina was beaten by gang members until she couldn't walk after she had seen her father-in-law murdered by the same gang because he'd helped a family friend to escape it. Judge Emmett Sullivan, yes, that Emmett Sullivan, held that Sessions' policy, a blanket rule that essentially barred most asylum claims from people like Grace and Mina, who suffered at the hands of domestic abusers or gang members, flew in the face of the proper understanding of refugee law. Sullivan, incidentally, yes, that's Sullivan, who just told Michael Flynn he sold out his country, also rapped the Trump administration's knuckles for setting up a policy that was neither adequately explained nor supported by agency precedent. Put another way, Sullivan called the DOJ out for creating a harmful policy out of thin air for no good reason. By implementing this policy, the Trump administration defeated the basic purpose of seeking asylum, that when you are unsafe in your home country and face violence or the persistent threat of violence, you should be able to leave and seek refuge in another country. That is international law. Judge Sullivan also wasn't happy with the Trump administration for more or less telling federal judges that their decisions don't matter. Sessions' policy memorandum essentially ordered asylum officers to ignore federal court decisions and instead apply only the policy that Sessions had announced. In the end, Judge Sullivan struck down almost the entirety of the administration's policy, saying there was no legal basis for the new rules. Sullivan also enjoined the government permanently from enforcing these policies. And finally, Sullivan ruled that the plaintiffs, who had already been deported back to their home countries, have to be brought back to the United States and given a chance to proceed through the normal asylum process with no unnecessary barriers for victims of domestic and gang violence. It is a massive victory for human rights. And yet, another reminder that the policies of the Trump administration are both morally and legally indefensible. Let's get on with our break, though it's a little late, but that's okay. We're here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And when we come back from the break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Everyone knows what it's like to itch, and the sensation can drive you mad. Or, if you're Yang Sun of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, it can drive you to explore how the brain tells you it's time to scratch.
Our study is aiming to understand the brain mechanism that promote the itch-scratching cycle.
Itching can be caused by a number of irritants, from allergic reactions and abrasive textures to bug bites, skin conditions, infections, or drugs. The usual solution is to simply scratch. But this cycle of itching and scratching, if it continues unabated, can actually damage tissue, like if you scratch yourself raw. And Sun notes that
effective treatment for chronic itch is still lacking. This is largely due to our limited knowledge about the neuromechanism of itch.
Over the past 10 years, scientists have learned a lot about how the itch signal is carried from the skin to the spinal cord.
In contrast, we know very little about how the itch information is processed in the brain and how the brain can dynamically modulate the processing of itch.
Sun and his colleagues focused their attention on the periaqueductal gray, a brain region known to be involved in handling the closely related sensation of pain. They started by exposing mice to histamine, or the anti-malarial drug chloroquine, both of which trigger scratching. And they found that this itch-inducing treatment activates a particular set of neurons within the periaqueductal gray, neurons that produce a neurochemical called TAC1. And when the researchers eliminated this set of neurons, scratching was significantly diminished. And when they activated the neurons, even in the absence of a chemical irritant, the scratching resumed. Sun thus thinks of these TAC1 expressing neurons as the itch neurons in the brain. Getting these neurons firing makes animals itchy and gets them to scratch. His findings appear in the journal Neuron.
These itch neurons in the brain can be a potential central therapeutic target for breaking the vicious itch scratching cycle associated with chronic itch,
which could be a big relief for many irritated people. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Jeff Sessions was a horrible attorney general, and Trump's nominee to replace him, William Barr, could be even worse.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Sessions enthusiastically defended Trump's cruel family separation policies and the Muslim ban and the new, almost insurmountable hurdles to asylum. The former AG also staunchly defended voter suppression across America and rolled back LGBT rights and ordered prosecutors to seek the maximum possible prison sentence in every criminal case. Barr agrees with these positions. He also is an unequivocal opponent of reproductive choice who has said, quote, "I do not believe the right to privacy extends to abortion. I believe Roe versus Wade should be overruled." Most important to Trump, Barr believes in expansive executive power. And Barr, unlike Sessions, will not be recused from overseeing Robert Mueller's investigation, which Barr has roundly criticized. Which raises the question, can the Senate Judiciary Committee extract a commitment from Barr to honor the independence of the independent counsel Robert Mueller? and a pledge to enforce civil rights instead of leading the charge to deny them to people in America who are neither rich nor powerful nor a member of Trump's base.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union, because freedom can't defend itself.
If you're wondering where Congress's next truly bad idea will come from, keep an eye on a secretive far-right-wing outfit called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a legislative bawdy house with an exclusive corporate clientele. The Koch brothers, AT&T, ExxonMobil, and other giants pay ALEC to hook them up with Republican state lawmakers who are, well, on the make. In exchange for sponsoring the corporation's special interest bills, the legislators gain corporate sugar daddies to fund their future campaigns. It's a hanky-panky quid pro quo that produces litter after litter of bad laws. Consider one that's an absolute corporate wet dream, for it would remove the people's power to elect our United States senators, letting state legislators choose them. This maneuver to take power from the people and turn it over to far higher legislators would return America to the days of outright auctioning of Senate seats. Until the people passed the 17th Amendment in 1913, senators were chosen in backroom deals between corporate bribers and crooked lawmakers, and ALEC's draft proposal is bluntly succinct. The 17th Article of Amendment is hereby repealed. Back to the future. This idea of ripping off the people's democratic power is being touted by such intellectual giants as Rick Oops Perry, the corrupt ex-governor of Texas, who's now turning tricks for oil and nuclear power conglomerates as Trump's energy secretary. Perry wails that the 1913 law letting the public elect senators, quote, took the states out of the process. So now Rick and other corporate supremacists want to take the people out of the electoral process so the state can control it. The corporate state, that is. This is Jim Hightower saying, to repeal this effort, connect with commoncause.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Out front tonight, President Trump kowtowing to Vladimir Putin, giving Putin exactly what he wants in 2 major ways. First, lifting sanctions off 2 big Russian firms. And second, announcing that he's going to pull American troops out of Syria, something Putin wants more than almost any other thing. It could not get better for Putin today. And Trump, in a new White House video tonight, sticking by his Syria announcement, and he did it on a video. He didn't come out and speak to the nation. He didn't answer questions on the decision. He's not answering questions from Congress. No. He hid away and put out a little video. Here's a clip.
And we have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. We've taken back the land, and now it's time for our troops to come back home.
Okay, well, he can say it as much as he wants to say it. But again, he said that without taking questions from anyone or talking to anybody because he didn't want to answer the questions, and his own party is livid.
That's CNN's Erin Burnett kicking off her Wednesday night show, blasting Donald Trump for making the false claim that ISIS has been defeated in Syria and announcing via Twitter that he has ordered all U.S. forces to leave. The pullout raised significant doubts in Washington, with lawmakers concerned it could lead to a resurgence of the militant group, undercut U.S. leverage in the region, and undermine diplomatic efforts to end the Syrian civil war. Even Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Trump's staunchest backers, called the move a, quote, huge Obama-like mistake.
To those who say we have defeated ISIS in Syria, that is an inaccurate statement. They have been hurt, they have been degraded, and I give the president all the credit in the world for changing our policies regarding the fight against ISIS, but I will not buy into the narrative that they have been defeated in Syria, Iraq, and I just got back from Afghanistan, haven't slept in 2 days, really appreciate the chance to go visit our troops and talk to our generals, but they're sure as hell ISIS-K is not defeated in Afghanistan. So To say they're defeated is an overstatement and is fake news. It is not true.
The Washington Post reporting that a number of close U.S. allies who are members of the U.S.-led coalition against ISIS said they were not consulted and were given no prior warning. One European defense secretary put in a call Tuesday to Jim Mattis after hearing rumors of the decision and received a late-night call back from the defense secretary with confirmation. General Dunford, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, did not participate in the meeting with Trump and was in the dark until after it took place. At least one person is happy about the planned withdrawal, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking at his annual news conference in Moscow Thursday morning, Putin said that Trump's move to withdraw troops was appropriate because the U.S. presence in Syria is, quote, illegitimate. He added that serious blows had been imposed on ISIS in Syria. On this, he said, Donald is right. I agree with him. But analysts say ISIS remains a deadly insurgent force. It looks like a government shutdown has been averted, for now anyway. The Senate on Wednesday passed a short-term spending bill that keeps the government open through February 8th and avoids a shutdown at the end of the week. The House is expected to pass the bill, which denies Trump funding for his much-sought-after border wall. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate will remain in session on Thursday pending House action on the spending bill. But the House Freedom Caucus is livid. Their members took to the floor Wednesday night to excoriate Republicans for not building the wall as part of this spending bill. Mark Meadows, chair of the House Freedom Caucus, called Trump out on Fox.
Ann Coulter and others on the right are blasting the president. Coulter says, among other things, the president's gutless, and she says he will lose re-election in 2020 if he kicks the can down the road. Do you agree?
Well, it's not even what Ann is saying. It's what the vast majority of your viewers and the American people are saying. And it's not that he's gutless. They believe that he's getting bad advice. They know that he's promised not once, not twice, but 3 different times that he would get border wall funding. And here we are about to punt. And I would argue it's not a punt. A punt actually helps improve the field advantage. This is a fumble, and we need to make sure that the president stays firm. And a lot of people are very nervous this morning about whether the president will cave or not.
The Trump administration unveiled a plan Thursday to force more Americans to hold jobs if they want to continue to receive food stamps. The announcement comes hours before Trump is expected to sign a nearly $870 billion farm bill funding the nation's agricultural programs, legislation that did not include any changes to work requirements for food stamps. Against Trump's objections, the Federal Reserve on Wednesday hiked the nation's benchmark borrowing rate by 0.25%, the 4th rate hike this year, causing stocks to tumble again, with the S&P 500 index finishing 1.5% lower, bringing its losses for the month so far to over 9%. At this rate, stocks are on track for their worst December since 1931, yes, during the Great Depression. North Korea said it will never unilaterally give up its nuclear weapons unless the U.S. first removes its nukes defending South Korea and Japan. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's policies that prevented immigrants victimized by gang violence or domestic abuse in their home countries from seeking asylum. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. President Trump abruptly ordered the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria within 30 days on Wednesday, arguing that American interests there had been achieved after having, quote, defeated ISIS. That decision blindsided diplomats, military officials, and other experts. Ilan Goldenberg directs the Middle East Security Project at the Center for a New American Security.
I mean, the argument that they have made most compellingly is ISIS is going to come back if you do this, unless you plan carefully and unless you take the time to actually get this right. But increasingly, I'm not sure the president was buying that.
A hasty withdrawal could also create an opening for Iran to funnel support to Hezbollah through unguarded parts of Iraq and Syria, thereby intensifying the potential threat to Israel.
If you decide that you really want to push back on Iran in the region, Syria is absolutely vital to their interests. They're going to be in Syria for the long haul. They have 100,000 or so militia fighters supporting Assad. And if the U.S. pulls out, which it looks like we're doing in a 30-day period, that's just open season for the Iranians.
Turkey could also fill the American void in Syria. It hopes to crush the Kurdish troops that fought alongside the U.S. to dispel ISIS because of their desire for an independent Kurdish state.
The best case scenario I see is the Kurds cut a deal with the Assad regime to be reintegrated into Syria. You don't end up with a new Turkish-Kurdish fight, and so then this moves towards unifying Syria while we get our troops out.
Still, Goldenberg says that would mean a win for Russia, a win for Iran, and put the U.S. in the position of rooting for President Assad to hold Syria together.
When that's your best case scenario, Assad wins but nobody else fights, that's not really that great of a best case scenario.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. We are in an active, dense fog advisory at the moment. Expected also to be cooler than yesterday with a high topping out about 47 degrees. Right now, the winds are light and variable out of the northeast, shifting in just a couple of hours out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing, well, just about, not just about, a bit over a half an inch of rain. So we're looking forward to that. And let's see. So we'll have more rain tonight, and it looks like about a quarter inch or more. And the winds will then be light and variable, and will remain light and variable tomorrow with a smaller chance of rain. Highs in the mid-40s tomorrow. Overnight lows in the mid-30s. Right now, pollen is rated as none. The air quality index has inched ever so slightly up to 42 parts per million, still in the good index, but not so good for people with breathing problems. Could be better, of course. And the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.95 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles. And humidity, which is relative, of course, is 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Rome is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. Kiev is 23 degrees and just cloudy. Not partly cloudy, but they're cloudy. Kabul is 37 degrees with smoke. Yeah, that's more powerful than cloudy. Hong Kong is 69 degrees and cloudy. Tokyo is 45 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 72 degrees with clouds and wind. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 43 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny with an active weather advisory of a gale warning. So hold on to your hats, button up that top button, stay warm. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Israel of Think Progress brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. After Republicans lost their hold on key political positions in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Kentucky in the 2018 blue wave, lame duck legislative Republicans have drawn national attention for their efforts to strip power from the newly elected Democrats and to ram through as much legislation as possible while they still can. Wow. In Michigan, the Republican-controlled legislature already canceled a popular minimum wage increase and weakened the state's paid leave policy in the final days before Democrat Gretchen Whitmer replaces Republican Governor Rick Snyder. But it appears their effort to strip the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, a Democrat, of her powers may have been a bridge too far for the state's House. A bill to take away campaign finance oversight from the new Secretary of State, proposed by Republican State Senator Dave Robertson, passed the Senate earlier this month. His proposal would have created a bipartisan committee like a dysfunctional and frequently deadlocked Federal Election Commission to oversee the issue. Robertson himself is under an ethical cloud given his history of campaign finance fines and an ongoing criminal investigation into embezzlement by his former campaign treasurer and chief of staff. Well, State Rep Aaron Mueller, a Republican, said yesterday that the House Elections and Ethics Committee, which he chairs, would not consider the bill during the lame duck session due to lack of support. That means the bill is dead, and good riddance.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers. C'est tout.
Mary Elizabeth Williams of Salon brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And a very small amuse-bouche it is, a very tiny little kiss, sometimes packs the most power. I just want to say very quickly, go and read the article at the links provided. Penny Marshall was a mercurial artist. I only know her from afar from friends who were extras, actually, on both Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. And she was a talent beyond compare. And I look at her not as being a woman director or an actress, but as a powerful actor and a powerful director. And her passing is a very sad passing, and it marks an age in which some of us have come of age. So that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but our Netroots Radio broadcasts on, so do stay tuned. And we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Indeed we will. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent tendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus d'être tendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.